So, good morning to all. And friends, it is well known to all that from 15th of September onwards, UPSC was conducting civil services mains examination. So, as a part of that, till now, but that means like in 15th, 16th, and 17th, by these 3 days, general studies papers have got completed. So, UPSC has done its work, and those aspirants were attempting the test, they have done their part. And now, being prospective civil servants and aspirants, it is our part to just understand and to decode those question papers so that we will get a better kind of orientation towards approaching the mains. Okay, so let's try to, in these sessions, like let's try to decode and analyze various general studies papers. So first, as a part of that, let's try to understand general studies 1 paper. Okay, so what topics are constituted under general studies 1? Are you aware? Yes? Yes, one thing is we have history section, which consists of modern history and world history and post-independence India, and then geography, Indian society, then art and culture, yes. Then, so that is with respect to history section. So then we have society section. In society section, we have various aspects. And then we have geography section. These are the 3 major sections: history section, geography section, and society section. Okay, so if you just basically look at the first impression or the primary impression about the GS paper 1, the question paper is, it's very well balanced. It's very well balanced, and it's a dynamic question paper. It's a dynamic question paper. And we are saying here the question paper is very well balanced means if you look at the 3 broader sections of GS1, so one is geography section, and from geography section, out of 20 questions, there were 8 questions have been picked and asked, and 4 from 10 marker section and 4 from 15 marker section. So 4 10 markers 40 marks and 4 15 markers 60 marks. A total of 100 marks has been asked from geography, and this is an escalating trend with respect to geography. So if you look from past trends, geography, UPSC is giving more importance to geography. So this is one thing. That means prima facie, if you see, these are 8 questions. And then let's try to analyze how they have been interlinkedly asked. Let's try to have a look at that also. So then, if you look at second section, that is Indian society. So as we were saying in the classes, Indian society has been substantially taken a lot of contribution in this year's paper. Prima facie, if you see, there were 6 questions have been asked from Indian society section, and 3 questions from 10 marker and 3 questions from 15 marker, a total of 75 marks. Okay, so that was one thing. So then if we talk from history and art and culture section, so from this section, questions have been not directly asked. There were total of 6 questions have been picked from history section, and 3 from 10 marker and 3 from 15 marker. So total was 75. But there was a slight trick that has been used by UPSC here. It has not asked sole history questions, whereas it has linked history with society, it has linked history with geography, and out of these 6 questions, 2 questions have been mixed with the society, and 1 question has been mixed with the geography. So out of 6 questions, 3 questions only were directly from history. So this was a different trend from UPSC. And if you just analyze the entire paper, I was saying it is balanced because division was fair in one way. I was saying that the paper was dynamic for 2 factors. One factor was that questions that have been picked in UPSC in GS1, they were not purely of static in nature. They are interlinked with the current affairs. And most of the topics have been interlinked with the current affairs. Either it can be from geography section or it can be from society section. So that is one thing. And the next thing, it is dynamic in this nature that the paper has been beautifully interlinked with various other papers. See, as we generally say in the classes that you should not read the subject in an isolated manner. Geography should not be read as geography only. You have to interlink geography with other factors, geography with the history, geography with the ecology, environment, and geography with other aspects likewise. And history should not be read in isolated manner. It also has to be interlinked. So that's what this paper is showing. So if we talk from that perspective, UPSC tried to check the analytical ability of the students with this paper. So that is another aspect. Okay, so paper was well set. Okay, and if you look from the questions point of view, so just have a look at the questions that have been asked. So question paper, if you look from the question papers are, the official question papers are not out, in the sense UPSC has not released them, but still we had the question papers from the students. So instead of showing them, like I have just brought the questions, okay, so that they would be clear. So look at the questions. So out of 20 questions, if you see, look at these first 3 questions. When you see the question paper in UPSC, how the question paper would be set means, usually it divides the questions into different sections and it will ask. If it is in 10 marker question, look at this one out of paper 1. First 3 questions which have been there in this brown color or red color, they are related to history section. Okay, so that was one thing. So 3 10 marker questions. Let's try to pick each question and let's try to have a look at the approach, like how you can just write answer. Let's try to understand the approach in detail, but I'm showing here the questions. Okay, so we were saying 3 questions from history section, they were this. Okay, so look at the first question. Explain the role of geographical factors towards the development of ancient India. Towards the ancient India. The question is from history section, but the emphasis is there on geography section. So what is that? It is trying to check the, UPSC is trying to check the analytical ability, how you can apply the geography knowledge with the history knowledge. So that was one thing. Okay, then look at this question. This question was from ancient India, ancient and medieval India point of view, and art and culturals, we can say. Then look at the second question. What was the difference between Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore in their approach towards education and nationalism? So this question has been picked from modern India and from the scholars' point of view. So between Rabindranath Tagore and Mahatma Gandhi. So this was from modern India point of view. And then look at this question, third question, bring out the socio-economic effects in the introduction of railways in different countries of the world. So what do you think, from which section this question would have been in history? Which part? It is from modern India. Look at the question. So it is talking about different countries of the world. Yes, very good. So it is both, it is clubbed. Modern history has been clubbed with the old history. So here they are asking about introduction of railways, significance of introduction of railways in different countries of the world, they are asking. So most of the students, those who have written, they have simply written about the importance of railways, introduction of railways in India. So that was one mistake done by some of the students. Okay, here whenever we are doing such questions, we have to read the question carefully again and again. Read the question carefully. You should not miss the crux in that. Okay, so that is one thing. So this was from third section. So again, it was beautifully interlinked with modern India, has been interlinked with the world history. So that is one thing. So then look at these questions which have been there in blue color. There were 4 questions from geography. So one was, discuss the consequences of climate change and the food security in the tropical countries. Impact of climate change. Climate change, if we basically talk, it is from environment and ecology. So topic was from environment. They have picked one topic from environment ecology and they clubbed it with the geography. So again, you can see how UPSC is interlinking the subjects. Not only the subjects, but it is interlinking the papers. So that is one thing. So next question, just have a look. Why is the world today confronted with the crisis of availability of fresh water, fresh availability and access to fresh water resources. So this question is purely from natural resources. Natural resources. In geography, we have natural resources, and they're interlinking with the current relevance. So water scarcity is a major problem that the world facing today. So this question was from that point of view. And again, here also we can see a tinge from environment ecology. So GS paper 3. So you need to have the knowledge of both here. So then, what are zones? Make it like FJ, what? FJ, J should be there. What are zones? How are zones formed? How do they constitute some of the most picturesque areas of the world? So this question is from physical geography. Physical geography, there are so many geophysical features. So from that, zones. Zones is one such concept. So it is technical question that has been asked. So this requires in-depth knowledge. In-depth knowledge. So UPSC has also tried to check that knowledge also. Okay, so that is one thing. So look at the next question. Why is southwest monsoon called Purvaya? Purvaya means easterly in Bhojpur region. And how has this directional seasonal wind system influenced the cultural ethos of the region? So that was a question. So from which part of geography the question is? From which? Yes, it is from monsoons, Indian monsoons. So monsoons is one of the favorite topic for UPSC. So it has picked. So this question requires basic understanding of monsoons and the direction from which winds will flow. Okay, how winds are named. If you know that how winds are named, then you can answer the first part of the question. So that is one thing. So don't worry, like let's try to see a detailed approach, how we can just go through that. But I'm just introducing the questions so that you will have an idea. Okay, so this was the fourth question from geography section. Then look at the next section, that is society section. So are you able to visualize the sequence in which they are going? So in every paper there would be sequence. It is either it is in GS1, GS2, GS3, questions would be given in such a manner. Okay, so they will pick and they will give questions in that way. So look at the first question in Indian society. Do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India? So this was a direct hit. We have also discussed in the class various factors responsible for changes in the marriage and marriage system. Okay, so it is asking about that. So topic marriage was in news recently for so many reasons. It wasn't, if you happen to cover current affairs, that's what significance of reading newspapers is that. If you happen to read the newspapers, most of the questions that have been asked in society section can be attempted. So even if you have not started reading newspapers, start reading them from now at least, because all the topics which have been picked by UPSC this year's in society section, they were from the newspaper important. That means those which are in current related things. So look at the next question. Explain why suicides among young women is increasing in Indian society. So we have a topic called role of women and problems and issues faced by women. So amongst problems and issues faced by women, suicides is one of the important problem and important concern nowadays. So if you look from current context point of view, suicides in women are increasing. So the question was picked from that section. Okay, so that is one thing. So then child cuddling is now being replaced by mobile phones, and discuss its impact on the socialization of the children. Look at this question. See, this question does not require any specific knowledge. So this question requires the general knowledge, basic knowledge about how the society is functioning and what are the impacts of technology on the socialization process. So this was a question. Again, it does not require any specific knowledge. If we talk from geography section point of view, you need more factual knowledge. And if you look from society section, you need to have more of analytical knowledge. And if you talk from history section point of view, you need both analytical as well as factual knowledge. So just try to look how UPSC is beautifully picturized or beautifully framed this year's question paper. Earlier it used not to be like this. Earlier questions were in different pattern, but this time there were a lot of issues were there with prelims papers. So this time UPSC was very wise and it has given beautiful paper. Beautiful paper in the sense, those who have attempted, they might have faced issues, but when we are looking from outside, it is looking very beautiful. Okay, so look at the next question, that is, what are the main features of Vedic society and Vedic religion, and do you think some of the features are prevailing still in the society, still Indian society? So mostly you might have read about the Vedic society and features of Vedic society. So this is one simple question, but it also requires the application and analytical knowledge. Here they are interlinking the ancient Indian features with the Indian society, modern society. So slight applicative knowledge is required. So that is one thing. So this question is also looks simple, but it needs extra knowledge. And then next question from the history section. So what were the major technological changes introduced during this Sultanate period? And how did those technological changes influence the Indian society? Now can you see again, they have brought, one thing was from ancient India, they interlinked with society. And other question, this is with medieval India, and again they interlinked with Indian society. Now, can you able to understand? I have said the paper is well balancedly framed, but despite of framing in a balanced way, the paper is slightly tilted towards more of geography and society than history. Though there is history questions, but in those history questions also, it has been systematically interlinked with the society and geography. Okay, so out of 20 questions, as I have already said, so from that point of view, 9 questions were related to geography and around 8 questions were related to Indian society. Now you see these 2 questions, so they are from Indian society. We can interlink these 2 questions also from Indian society. So 9 from Indians geography and 8 from society and 3 are purely from history section. So that's how the question paper is. So from that point of view, it is slightly tilted towards geography and slightly tilted towards Indian society. Okay, so that was one thing. So first time UPSC has touched medieval Indian portion. First time in the sense, if we compare in the recent 3-4 years, it hasn't touched medieval Indian question, medieval Indian history. And now it has also gave indications in the prelims itself. In the prelims itself, it has gave that indications. So usually what students will do and what you should not do is that just try to analyze the trend of the papers. For example, if UPSC is picking one particular section, do not blindly read the same section again. Try to analyze the past 3 to 4 years papers. UPSC tactically neglects one section. You mark my words. It tactically neglects one section for past 4 to 5 years. And in the next year, that is in 5th or 6th year, it picks that zone. So that's why UPSC becomes tougher for the students, because it becomes unpredictable, because for some time it neglects one topic. So students will feel that these topics are lost relevance and they are not important from UPSC perspective, but again it will pick and it will ask questions from that. So that's what happened with the medieval history also. If you analyze from pre-perspective, in past 3 to 4 years, they were picking terms from medieval Indian history they were asking. Now, in this year, like they have directly asked one question from medieval Indian history. So now it has shifted its focus even in mains also. Earlier, it was not the case. So that is one thing. So what you have to do in any paper, it can be GS1, GS2, GS3 or GS4, you try to just check the reasons which UPSC is neglecting and tactically prepare that section better, so that you don't feel the paper as difficult, you don't feel the paper as uncertain. So that thing you have to do from now onwards. Okay, so that is one thing. So now have a look at next question. How did the colonial rule affected the tribals in India, and what was the tribal response to colonial oppression? So this question, it's a question from modern India. So the different policies given by British rule, different policies adapted during the British rule, and tribal revolts, movements are there, tribal movements are there, and tribal revolts are there. So we have to discuss and we have to write all those things. Let's see. So this is from modern Indian section. So that is from history. So 3 questions in 10 marker, 3 questions in 15 marker, done with that portion. So now, if you look in the geography section again, comment on the resource potential of the long coastline of India and highlight the status of natural hazard preparedness in these areas. So again, you look, you need to have the knowledge of geography, and again you need to have the knowledge of disaster management. So GS1 is systematically interlinked with GS3. So again, you look how the applicative knowledge is required here. Okay, so let's try to discuss what are they, but I'm just introducing the question so that when we go further, you will get an idea. So that is one thing. So look at the next question in geography again. Identify and discuss the factors responsible for diversity of natural vegetation in India. And if you look from this question again, tactically UPSC has neglected the human and economic geography in past papers. Mostly it used to focus on physical geography portion. Mostly, I'm not saying no question has been asked, but mostly there were questions being used to ask from physical geography portion. But now in this paper, they have shifted their focus from physical geography to human and economic geography. And this question is from biogeography section, natural vegetation. Again, this question requires the knowledge from geography as well as environment and ecology. So GS1 with GS3, can you see the interlinkage? So that is one thing. So assess the significance of wildlife sanctuaries in rainforest regions of India. So those who were attempting the question paper, they might have felt that whether it is GS paper 1 or so GS paper 3 or other thing, because that's how subjects are interlinked. Again, I am saying, okay, so that is one thing. So now you look at this question. How did human development fail to keep pace with the economic development in India? This question is from the human geography interlinked with the economic development. So human development has been interlinked with economic development. So this question also requires current knowledge as well as the static knowledge. So this question also requires the interlinkage between geography with the economy. So that is one important aspect. So that's how. So now you look another question. From being net food importer in 1960s, India has emerged as a net food exporter in the world. Provide reasons. This is again from geography, but is this purely from geography? Yes, it's not purely from geography. It is interlinked with GS3 again, agriculture. Interlinked with again with agriculture, and you need to have agriculture knowledge here. You need to have the factual knowledge of exports and imports from the economy section, economic survey, and again you need to have the knowledge of the geography here. So that's how this has been framed. Okay, so that is with reference to the geography questions. So they were like that. So now again, society section questions. Does urbanization lead to more segregation or marginalization of the poor in Indian metropolises? So this question from Indian society and urbanization, their problems and remedies. There was a question, there was a concept, urbanization. In class also while discussing, we have discussed. More or less, if you see, questions from society section are direct and they are simpler compared to other sections. Okay, so urbanization and their impact on the poor people. So that's how. Now, why is caste identity in India both fluid and static? Why is it both fluid and static? So that is one question. So this question again, it is from salient features of Indian society, caste and caste system. And what are the changes that are being done in the caste system? What are the factors that are responsible for the changes in the caste system? So that portion. Okay, so that is one important aspect. So then last portion, if you see, discuss the impact of post-liberal economy on the ethnic identity and communalism. Impact of post-liberal economy on ethnic identity and communalism. Now the topic picked, it is from regionalism, communalism and secularism, that section, that topic. So you will have one topic from the society. So communalism topic. So you look here, again, it requires the knowledge of the economy, post-liberal economy. You need to have the interlinkage with GS paper 3 again. So you need to understand what is post-liberal economy, and there you have to interlink what is the impact on ethnic identity and communalism. So that's how the questions have been asked. Okay, so except this question, whatever the questions that have been picked and asked from Indian society can be asked with generic knowledge. Questions were generic, and even if you cover the current affairs, if you cover the newspapers, you can attempt that questions. So that is with reference to the questions that have been asked. And now in this session, what we will try to do, that is our quest in this class, our quest in this session is that what should be our approach and how we should write answers for these questions. So that is important. So what would be the best approach to write the answers? Okay, let's try to understand and let's try to discuss basic hints which can be used in these questions. Okay, because like explaining entire concepts cannot be possible. So let's see the basic approach and let's try to discuss important points in the important points that we can use to address the demand of the question. So let's do that portion. So that was with reference to the question paper. Now, did you get the idea how questions were there? So now you look at the questions again. So geography section, purely there were 8 questions, and including with history, 9 questions were there. So that means a total of 110 marks were related to geography. That is one thing. Again, if you look from Indian society section, 6 purely from Indian society and 2 again from linked with history. So from that point of view, roughly it was around 100 marks. Again, it was around 100 marks. And then from art and culture section, history and art and culture, 6 questions clubbed with other sections. So that is how it has been asked. So that's the primary impression of the question paper. So you also try to keep these things in mind. So channelize your preparation in this modality. As I always say in the class, do not read the subjects, do not read the topics in an isolated manner. Brainstorm and interlink all the topics, interconnect one topic with other topic, interconnect one subject with other subjects. So that is very, very important. Okay, so here, instead of taking questions from 1 to 3 likewise, let's go by section wise. Okay, it would be easier for us to cover things in a systematic manner. Let's take geography questions and let's try to analyze those questions, and then let's move on to society section, and then let's move on to history section likewise. Okay, so let's go in that manner. So basically, if you happen to analyze the topics that have been picked by UPSC in framing geography questions, these were the topics. Now, you look at the topics which have been picked by UPSC. First topic is, it is related to climate change and impact of climate change on the food security of tropical countries. Do you remember the question? So that was one topic. So then next topic was water scarcity from resources, natural resources, the crisis of fresh water availability and its access worldwide. This was another topic. Okay. Then next concept was formation and scenic nature of the zones. So this was another topic. Then southwest monsoon and its influence in Bhojpur region. So that was one another topic. So then resource potential of India's coastline. Do you remember the question on coastline? And natural hazard preparedness. So that was one question. Then factors that influence the diversity of natural vegetation in India and significance of wildlife sanctuaries. So that was another topic. Then disparity between economic development and human development in India. So this was one question. This was one topic. Then factors behind transformation of India from net food importer to net food exporter. So this was another topic. So UPSC has picked unusual topics this time. So those topics are from geography, but they are not purely from geography. So from that point of view, questions that have been picked from geography section are slightly moderate to tougher level, slightly moderate to tough in nature, which requires factual knowledge, which requires analytical knowledge, which also requires the static as well as interlinkage of the subjects. So that is the primary impression on the geography questions. Okay, so there, let's try to take up each question and let's see what can be the approach that we can use with respect to these questions. Okay, so first question, if you see from geography section, that was discuss the consequences of climate change and the food security in tropical countries. So how you have to approach these questions? Basically, whenever you see a question, try to just locate the central theme of the question. What is the central theme of the question? So here, two themes are there. One is climate change, another thing is food security. Climate change and food security. So we have to focus on those aspects. So here, how you can just what approach you can adapt in answering this question is that in introduction, what you can do, as the central theme is based on climate change. So basically you can define what is climate change. So you have to define what is climate change in the introduction. Okay, and then what you have to do, what is the relevance of this question from current context? So why this question has been asked? So that knowledge also you have to have. So again, if you see, we have the current context of the question was that recently in 2022, like a global food policy report 2022 has been released by FAO. So this global food policy report 2022 highlights the issue of food security in relation to climate change. So that is one thing. Another thing, World Bank has also released its data on food security, issues related to food security and food shortage. So that was the context why the question has been framed. On one side, climate change is one of the important problem that world is facing. So that is one thing. And the next important problem that world is facing is the food crisis, shortage of food. So they have interlinked these two. So here we have to mention in the introduction the context also. So statistics according to the Global Food Policy Report 2022, this is the status. So likewise, we have to articulate the points. So that is one important aspect. So that's how these points should be mentioned in the introduction, so that examiner will get a view that the student has understood the theme of the question and student has also understood the relevance of the question. When we know why the question has been asked. So, and if you are addressing that in the introduction itself, that gives a different impression on the students for the examiner. So we have to do that thing. Okay, so that is one important aspect. And now, so after defining and after giving the context, in body, what we can write is that basically we have to mention what is the potential impact and what are the consequences of climate change and the food security in the tropical countries. This is the chief demand of the question. And again, how we have to approach and how we have to write this question is that we should not write haphazardly. We have to go in a systematic manner. We have to divide the tropical countries into different sections. and then we have to provide the answer in a systematic fashion. So how you can just do that means you can just divide the entire things into different regions, like what is the impact of climate change on the South American region. So pick at least 2 countries like Brazil, pick such countries, Argentina. So pick those countries, tropical countries from South America, and you have to say how climate change is impacting the food security in this region. So in the similar fashion, like in West Africa and East Africa, do you know one another context was Somalia, one of the East African country. One of the East African country was in severe famines, was utterly in issues with respect to food shortage and food crisis. And in fact, if you try to analyze, interlink it with prelims papers, there was a question on prelims also. There was a question on prelims also with respect to Somalia. So they have picked which of the following countries is in severe famines, facing severe famines and facing severe food crisis. In that manner, they have given a question. So UPSC has this time has given hints in prelims itself that what am I going to ask in the mains. So that's why for next time also you also try to just focus such kind of things. Okay, so UPSC has given such hints this time. So in that manner you have to highlight those facts related to Somalia, those factors, how it is facing food issues, all such kind of things. So then in South Asia, Southeast Asia, so these are the countries that we come in the tropical regions. Okay, so climate change and its impact. So when we talk about the climate change, so what points you have to just mention? What is the impact of climate change on food security? So here you have to mention what are the various consequences of climate change, and you have to interlink the consequences with the food shortage or food crisis. So there you can mention some of the points, like for example, climate change is basically responsible for bringing some issues. So what could be the possible likely impacts of climate change or consequences of climate change? Yes, one thing is global warming. So yes, interlink this with food security or agricultural productivity, and then you say, so how? Yes. Yes, exactly. So what she is trying to say is absolutely right. So the nature of agriculture, if you see, it is also related directly with the climate. So if global warming are changes in the temperature and changes in the rainfall. So one side, climate change is related to temperature, and climate change is also affecting the rainfall. So if we talk from those 2 point of view, rainfall, occurrence, availability of rainfall is getting scarce and temperature is rising. So these factors will basically impact the nature of agriculture. When nature of agriculture is getting affected, what are the various things that may just get affected? Means one thing, like we have issue of water scarcity. Okay, we have issue of water scarcity. Issue of water scarcity. So water scarcity, what it will do? So obviously we have issues with respect to irrigation and issues with respect to water availability. So because of this, what may happen? It may again lead to impact on the productivity. So this is one thing. And apart from that, these two things will again lead to showing impact on the changing crop patterns. So that is one thing. So such kind of issues are one important thing. So how is it impacting? Climate change is impacting means water scarcity is there. This water scarcity leads to changes, reduction in the productivity, and water scarcity will finally leads to changes in the crop pattern. So all of these factors will reduce the crop yield, productivity. So that is one important aspect. Okay, so then in India, if we talk from the Southeast Asia point of view, we have monsoonal climate. So monsoonal climate. Agricultural crops, if you see, crops will be grown in specific seasons. So if there is climate change, then obviously the crop seasons will get affected. So there would be gross shift or impact over these crop seasons. So that will also one important point. So then if we look from other important points point of view, climate change will also help in climate change also leads to global warming. So climate change, it leads to global warming. So global warming, it again leads to rise in the temperature, and rise in temperature again leads to rise in the sea levels. So when sea level rises, what it may happen? It leads to coastal erosion, such kind of issues. So coastal erosion is one point, and apart from that, there are so many other things that the coastal regions of the tropical countries will face. So that is one important thing. So that's how this is another effect of the climate change. Okay, so that is one thing. So then, yes, exactly. So if we interlink geography again here, in geography we have El Nino and La Nina. So climate change is also one of the climatic features like El Nino and La Nina. El Nino and La Nina. So these two things, they will also grossly responsible for affecting the agriculture and agricultural productivity. So that's how, if there is El Nino, then obviously some countries like Southeast Asian countries will face severe water scarcity. Yes, yes, and this is also recently these are also getting irregular because of climate change. Due to climate change, these things which has to happen, for example, if you talk from El Nino point of view, it has to happen for every 2 to 7 years. That is the regular, that has to circulate and that has to go in that manner. But due to climate change and all other such kind of human induced causes, this pattern is getting hampered and it is getting destroyed. So in that manner, El Nino and La Nina are also changing in frequent manner. So that is also one impact. So you have to interlink all these points with the tropical countries, and you have to say how these are being affecting the food security likewise. Okay, so that is one thing. So that's how you have to say. And in the conclusion, what you have to say, in the conclusion, you have to just highlight and provide some of the measures that we can adapt. The measures that we can adapt are solutions to address the issue. Yes, we have to just, yes. So whatever the goals which we have taken, so you have to mention all these points and you have to conclude that. So in order to overcome the food security, we have to adapt some of the possible measures. So there are a lot of measures. So climate change, we have to reduce global warming and we have to adapt by UNFCCC's targets, and all these things we have to mention. So we have to keep pace with the carbon emissions and we have to keep in pace with reduction of carbon footprints. So all of those things we can suggest, and we can say that by doing all these things, we can just address the issue of food scarcity or food security. We can address and we can just go for food security. Likewise, we have to conclude the answer. So that is with reference to this question. Okay, yes. कोई बात नहीं, चालू करना आप. No issue, Pritam. You can just. Okay. Okay, right. So that is one thing. So then, if you look at this second question, so second question is about why is world today confronted with a crisis of availability of and access to fresh water resources? So how this is being done? So again, this question is from water scarcity. So natural resources and water scarcity. So if you basically look from this question point of view, this question's context was with reference to recent reports. So there were recent reports stated by UN Water development report. UN has given water development report. So in this, it has highlighted about the issue of water scarcity and how world is facing issues related to water scarcity. So that is one thing. And recently UNICEF has also provided the data on this thing. So that was the context and introduction. You have to mention these facts. So remember one thing, that while writing in some of the questions, we have to highlight the statistical data. So this you have to follow in GS3, but as UPSC has systematically interlinked these topics with the GS3 paper, so we have to use the data here also. So from that point of view, you also have to have the factual knowledge. So that is also very, very important. Again, I am saying, like, we have to interlink the factual knowledge also. So here, how you can introduce means, you can introduce the question by stating that the status of water scarcity of fresh water resources in the world, to showcase or to highlight the gravity of the issue of water scarcity. The gravity of issue, we have to highlight the gravity of issue first. So how we can highlight the gravity of the issue means by highlighting or substantiating it with the data, so statistical data. So you have to pick and you have to mention these reports and this data. So when you write this data, then you will get a proper substantiation for this thing. With this, there are two advantages. One thing is that you are highlighting that you have understood the demand of the question, that the question is based on the theme of water scarcity. Other thing, you are going to explain the examiner that this was the context why the question has been used. So in this manner, one thing is that you will be highlighting and substantiating the data. So other thing, you will be explaining the central theme in the introduction itself. Okay, so that is one important aspect. Then in the body portion, what you have to do, the question is talking why water crisis is there. So what is the chief demand of the question? The chief demand of the question is that what are the reasons that are what are the factors that are responsible for fresh water scarcity of fresh water. So you have to mention the reasons responsible for this scarcity of fresh water. So that is one thing. So here you can mention all the things in a systematic manner. So what one thing you can mention here is that if you talk from the point of reasons for fresh water scarcity, so basically if you look from the point of things in a systematic manner, now one important reason for water scarcity is excessive burden on the fresh water resources. Excessive burden. So why excessive burden is happening? One thing is population growth. So here what's happening? One thing is that population is exponentially growing across the world. When population is growing exponentially, what's happening is that it's obviously posing an extra burden on the freshwater resources. So to cater the needs of the population or to cater the needs of the people, it is becoming an issue. So water scarcity is becoming an issue from that point of view. So next, if we talk from the perspective of other important aspects, so why water scarcity is there, next important point is that climate change. And climate change is leading to various issues. One issue that is arising out of climate change is the depletion of the groundwater resources and overutilization of the available water. So for all the purposes, so climate change is another important factor. Here you have to mention, like, due to climate change, we are getting less rainfall. So less rainfall we have to utilize the underground resources. So when we want to use underground waters, so if we are using excessively, then they're getting depleted. So that's how fresh water is, in one way it is getting depleted. Okay, so that means climate change, so you have to interlink all those points. So that is one thing. Okay, so that is one point. Then other thing, why water scarcity is there, it is environmental pollution. To be precise, it is, to be precise, water pollution. Water pollution is there, marine pollution is there, and all such kind of environmental pollutions are also causing one of the issue. So fresh water, we are talking from the perspective of fresh water scarcity. So though there can be fresh water resources, think of rivers, and you can mention things like Yamuna river water pollution. And if we talk from the North India point of view, particularly this belt, the Delhi, Haryana, and this belt like Uttar Pradesh, this region, Yamuna river water is majorly used for all the purposes. So Yamuna river pollution, you can quote the Yamuna river pollution, and you can say that that's how the water pollution is leading to scarcity of fresh water resources. If water is not pure, if water is not potable, what's the purpose for that? Okay, so pollution makes water unfit for consumption. So environmental pollution including water pollution. So that is one important aspect that we have to mention. Okay, so that is one thing. So then apart from this, you can interlink and you can mention other points like whatever we have written, whatever we have discussed already, like excessive exploitation of water resources or overutilization of water resources. So all these things you can mention and you can highlight and you can write these things. And the question is for 10 marker. So simply you can pick 5 to 6 points and you can explain them in systematically in 2 to 3 lines, so that you will meet the word limit and space limit also. So that's how you can highlight various factors or various reasons responsible for water scarcity. So that is one thing. So finally, you can conclude the answer. You can conclude the answer by highlighting and mentioning the measures or steps that we have to take. Yeah, all the measures. There are so many measures to control. There are so many measures to overcome the water scarcity. So we have to mention, we have to say judicious use of water. We have to say things related to climate change, steps that should take to address the issue of climate change. All those measures we have to say, and we have to conclude. And also water pollution, we have to say measures related to environmental pollution, all these things, and then we have to conclude the answer. So that would be the approach. Okay, introduction, body, and conclusion. That's how you have to keep the approach. Okay, is this clear? So that is one thing. So next question, what is the next question? Next question is, how are zones formed? How are zones formed, and how do they constitute some of the picturesque areas of the world? So basically, if we talk from the zones point of view, have you heard of these zones? Okay. So what are basically zones? Zones are nothing but these are. Yes. So usually when you see a sea region or a glacial region, if you see a sea region or a glacial region, so usually these are nothing but zones are nothing but geophysical features. So which are generally formed in glacial regions or in ocean regions or sea regions, seas. So usually these are nothing but thin passages from where water will pass by having a long cliffs or mountains. So you just try to have a look at look at the images so that you will get an idea what is zones properly, if you haven't have the knowledge about them. So if you look at zones, Zones are beautiful in nature. So question was generic in nature, and despite generic, but we have to mention all these things. So here one thing is they are asking how zones are formed. So that means in introduction, you basically say what are zones and in which region they would be formed. So as we were seeing here, like zones can be generally seen in the glacial regions and across the sea regions. So various regions where zones can be seen means normally they can be seen in Norway, Chile, New Zealand, Canada, Greenland, or the Alaska region, Alaska Strait of US. So in this region we can see zones. Okay, so that is one thing. So you have to highlight where they can be seen. Okay, that is one important thing. And in body, you have to explain the process of formation of jots, how jots are formed. So that is one important thing. So here you have to mention different steps. Let's try to have a look at steps that are there in this. So then the second part of the question, if you see, highlight the reasons why they are considered as picturesque areas. Why they are considered as picturesque areas of the world with appropriate examples. You have to give appropriate examples also. Instead saying generically, we have to give appropriate examples. That is one thing. So if we basically see the process of formation of zones, how zones are formed. So basically, if we try to analyze the steps in formation of zones, if you see steps in formation of zones, basically there can be 4 important steps. So usually what will happen, first thing is that the zones will be formed in reaction to the glacial activity. Glacial activity, if we are talking this from the glacial region, glacial activity. So glaciers will be there and a movement of glaciers. This is the first step. So glacial activity. And the glacial activities, when glaciers will move, then the next step would be the erosion of those regions where the glaciers will pass. So next step in the formation of zones is glacial erosion. Glacial erosion. So that is one important step. So glacial erosion, what it will do, it will cut the region and it will cut the surrounding physical features. If it is mountains, it will try to cut the mountains so that it can make a passage. So and it can move further to the lower valley region. So that is one thing. So then what will happen after glacial erosion? Then glacial retreat will occur. So glacial retreat means movements properly, like glaciers will move and it will solidify again in the winter, summers it will flow. So next step is glacial retreat. Glacial retreat will occur. So in glacial retreat, things will get settled down properly. So finally, if there is any tectonic activities like earthquakes or movement of the plates, all these things, it leads to slight adjustments and it creates some path for development of zones in a systematic manner. So next step in the formation of zone is the tectonic activity. Tectonic activity. So tectonic activity, it includes plate tectonics as well as sometimes like seismic activity also, earthquakes or such kind of things. So these are the important steps in the formation of zones. So here you have to say zone formation is also influenced with the tectonic process, and plate tectonic moments also will be responsible for formation of the zones likewise. So that's how you have to say, and that is how you have to say, and you have to mention these steps, and you have to, even if possible, you can illustrate with the help of a diagram also. Okay, that is one thing. So next thing, why they are considered as picturesque regions. why they are considered as picturesque reasons. So this thing also we have to understand, we have to explain. So if you look at these zones, basically zones will form, in simple manner to say, they would be generally, they are very well known for spectacular sceneries. If you look the zots will have a spectacular scenery, and they are the regions where you can have beautiful water and beautiful mountains, and the climate would be very fine and we can enjoy the climate. So that is one reason why they are picturesque. That is one thing. And if we look from other important factors, they also have unique geological features, unique geology. So this is one important thing. They are also known for unique geological features. Unique geological features. So unique geological features means we can observe all these factors related to glacial activity, related to the tectonic movements of the plates. So such things can be studied. So that is one important thing why they are most picturesque. Another thing is that this region is well known for the biodiversity and ecology. The environment and ecology would be very fine here. So it creates favorable conditions for flourishing the biodiversity. So that is one important thing. So biodiversity, where you can see different types of animals, different types of birds, and different types of all such things. So this again makes it as a picturesque reason. So that is one thing. So then, apart from this, as these are having all these things like spectacular sceneries and biodiversity, all these things, these regions will make the zones are regions for recreational zones. So recreation, they are best recreational zones. Okay, recreational zones where we can go for tours and we can just picnics, all these things. So in that manner, that is one of the important thing. Okay, and other important thing is that they are isolated with the other parts of the regions. So that sense of isolation, and as they form the best recreational zones, and due to better availability of rich biodiversity and good ecological features and unique geological features and spectacular sceneries. So all these things will make these roads unique, and they make these roads are picturesque. Picturesque means which are known for scenic beauty. So you can see, you might see in some of the pictures, or you might see in some of the movies also. So where you can see beautiful oceans where it passes in the middle of the mountains likewise. So that is one example for zones. So this half you have to mention the body portion, and that's how you have to address the demand of the question. So then finally in the conclusion, you can mention the significance of zones, and then you can conclude how we can just conserve the zones. So that is one important thing. So we can highlight the ecological as well as environmental significance of the zones. So that's how we can conclude the answer. So that is with respect to zones. Okay, so try to just have a look at the picture so that further you can just remember, and further you can just have a view. So otherwise, just let's try to have a view so that you can further connect with the zones. just have a look at these images. So these are nothing but zods. Now, can you see how they are? So aren't they beautiful? So look how beautifully water is there. Like water is there, and you can have the mountain cliffs like this, and you can just go for tours and picnics, and you can enjoy. In these areas, you can also enjoy the animals, or you can also enjoy the biodiversity that are there in this region. So that was a question picked by UPSC and asked. So this is an example for, this is a picture that represents the zod. Okay, now can you able to understand how they are picturesque? Likewise. So that is one important thing. So see all other pictures, they would be like this. So that's how they are beautiful things. So this is with respect to zods. Okay, so that's with our third question from geography. So then the next question from geography section is, with respect to the southwest monsoons. Why southwest monsoons are called as Purvai or easterlies in the Bhojpuri region? Here the question is simple, but they have highlighted a reason, and here the question has been beautifully interlinked with the geography, with the art and culture portion that you have to keep in mind here. So here they're asking about how does this monsoons are influencing the cultural ethos of the region. So that is one important aspect. So here we need to have specific knowledge of the Bhojpuri region. So where is Bhojpuri in this? Yes, in Bihar. So in Bihar region. So first part of the question, that is why it is called. So that is there, and second part is impact of the southwest monsoons on the cultural ethos of this. So how we have to approach this question means, in the introduction, basically you say central theme of the question is with respect to monsoons and southwest monsoons. So try to highlight or try to just define the monsoons in the introduction in one line. You say that monsoons are nothing but seasonal reversal of the winds, and then you say that monsoons can be in Indian region, monsoons can be broadly categorized into two types, stating that one is southwest monsoons and other one is northeast monsoons. So that is one thing. So then in the introduction itself, you can just pick the southwest monsoons and you can say that southwest monsoons again can be divided into two branches. So two branches. So you can say that in introduction, so define monsoons, and you mention about types of monsoons that are there in Indian region, and there you mention about branches of the southwest monsoons. So if we basically talk about the Indian region, so usually when southwest monsoons enters into India, so usually it will divide into two branches. One would be the Arabian Sea branch, and other would be Bay of Bengal branch. So here what will happen? So one branch will go like this, and one branch will shift, and one branch will go like this. Okay, so you mentioned that there would be two branches of southwest monsoon, and if you know that, basic thing is that basically winds, how winds are named. If you know that basically winds are named from the direction from which they are moving. For example, if this is the west and if this is the east, okay, if a wind is moving from east to west, if it is moving from east direction to west, then it is known as easterly wind. it is known as easterly wind. And in the similar fashion, if it is moving from west to east, so the direction from which it is coming, so that is how it would be named. So it would be known as westerly winds. That means it is coming from west side. So that is the basic thing. So here the question they are asking that why the southwest monsoons in Bhojpur region is known as Purvai. And what they have done is that one thing they have done, they have given it in English version. So for South Indian students and for Northeastern students, sometimes they may not understand what might be Purvai because it was a term related to that region. So they have mentioned it in English. So there it is helpful for addressing and that particular thing. So what happens here is that when we are talking about this thing, if we roughly just mention in this region what will happen when the southwest monsoons are moving in this direction. Here when they go, we will have the Arakan Yoma mountains here. Another thing, in northeastern region we will have Himalayas. One thing, and Arakan Yoma mountains and other thing. So when these Bay of Bengal branch monsoons they will go, they will hit this Arakan Yoma region, okay, and they'll be deflected back in this way. And here we will have northeast hills. So again they'll just go, they will hit and they'll be reflected back. So in this region, if you see the monsoons, they will enter into this region in this direction. Okay, usually they have to be from southwest. So from south side and from west sides they are entering. So this is the direction. But when we see in this region, due to presence of the physiographic barriers like Arakan Yoma mountains and Himalaya mountains, it will go hit and it will be deflected back. So this thus, if you see in the Bihar region, they will enter in this direction. So this is east and they are entering into these regions in this direction. So these are called as easterly because they are named from the direction from which they are coming. That is one thing. So Sampur region it is coming. So it is east. So they are called as easterly because of the direction of the monsoons or winds. So you have to say that due to the origin and due to the direction of the monsoons in this particular region, as they are entering from the east direction, they are called as easterly winds. So that's how you have to say. So in this question you have to use the map also. You have to use the map, Indian map, and you have to explain how the winds are moving. So that's how you can say. So that is one important thing in this question. So how your approach can be there? Explain that why southwest monsoons are known as Purvai in this region. Why means due to their direction. Then you also have to use the map. So that is one important thing. So that should be your first part of the answer. And then in the next part, you also have to highlight the impact of the southwest monsoons on different cultural aspects of the Bhojpuri region. Bhojpuri region means in this Bihar region. So there you have to have systematic knowledge of the cultural ethos of the region or cultural aspects of the region. So culture, basically if we talk from culture, it includes various aspects. So one thing if we talk art form is one thing. So then other thing food and agriculture is one thing. And then we can talk from clothing pattern is one thing. And then like lifestyle, all entire lifestyle is part and parcel of the culture. So here you have to interlink the southwest monsoons with the cultural aspects. So you have to say what is the agricultural pattern? What is the agricultural pattern of the Bhojpuri region and how is it being influenced by southwest monsoons? That is one thing. So if you interlink southwest monsoons with the agriculture and agriculture when you interlink southwest monsoons with agriculture and agricultural productivity, when you do this, what will happen? You will get to know the type of crops that are being produced there. So what kind of climate, what kind of crops that are grown in this region? You'll be talking about the crops, and the crops will try to highlight the nature of food, and it will try to highlight their habits, food habits. So that's how you can interlink the southwest monsoons with the food. So food is one type of cultural aspect. So that is one thing. And then we also have to interlink the southwest monsoons with respect to the art forms. We have to highlight the art forms. So you can say southwest monsoons, again they are responsible for peculiar presence of art forms. So if you look at some of the art forms in this region like Mithila art, Maithili art or Mithila art, all these things, we can see pictorial representation of the climate and these things. So you can say that the arts that are being, the arts of this region reflects the climatic features of this region, and that's how this is also linked with the monsoonal pattern. So in the simple fashion, one way we can connect likewise. And festivals and celebrations, fairs and festivals is another important aspect of the culture. So fairs and festivals. So you have to mention the fairs and festivals that are celebrated in connotation with the monsoonal season. Yes, that's what. So usually, like in arts, they have represented in pictures, they have represented how the environment, climate that would be there. So the environment and climate are the surroundings that reflects the significance of monsoons. So how this region is flourishing, getting flourished. So in one way we can say likewise. Okay, so that is one thing. So then fairs and festivals also peculiarly they would be celebrated. So that aspects we can bring and we can say that things. And clothing and lifestyle, we can also link the clothing and lifestyle. So we can also say in such manner. So answer can be generic in a way. There is no specific peculiar answer we can say likewise. So that's how we can just pick some of the cultural aspects and we can show how that can be done. Okay, so generic way. Okay, there is no specific things to quote particularly likewise. So that is with respect to the southwest monsoons topic. So then in the conclusion, how you can conclude the question means, in the conclusion you can highlight overall significance of monsoons to India, and you can say that this is how monsoons are important for India. So significance of monsoons you can say, and you can just conclude the answer likewise. So that is one important area that has been picked by UPSC. Then next question, if you see, comment on the resource potential of the long coastline of India. Resource potential of the long coastline of India, and highlight the status of natural hazard preparedness of these regions, these areas, in these areas. So that's the question. So the question has two concepts. One is they are talking about the India's coastline, another thing the hazard preparedness. So as the chief question is with respect to coastal areas and coastal line, so in introduction you can introduce the answer by mentioning about different physiographic divisions of India, stating that India is well known for rich and vivid physiographic divisions, like it contains various mountains, various plateaus, various desert, it contains desert, and along with this it also contains a rich coastal region. And there you can mention that length of India's coastline. So you can mention, so what's the length of India's coastal line? It is 7,500. So you can mention the length of the coastal area, and you can say that the coastal line, due to availability of long coastal line, India has various advantages. So that's how you can introduce, and you can say in introduction. So then in the body portion, what you can say? In the body portion, one thing is that in the first portion of your answer, you have to highlight the resource potential of India's coastal line with appropriate example. Resource potential. Resource potential means here you have to mention the various resource availability, like fisheries is one thing. So you have to highlight the fisheries, how fisheries and how the coastline is helping in the aquaculture likewise. Then next thing you have to highlight the tourism also. So coastline is also serving as a tourism. It is also helping and doing such kind of thing. Then you can also highlight the mineral resources that are available across the coastline. Coastline, the coastal region is also well known for extraction of minerals. One thing is fisheries, another thing is mineral resources, and other thing is the it has also tourism. It has also cultural recreational significance like tourism. So that is one thing. And we can also mention that it is also well known for the biodiversity. The coastal region is also well known for biodiversity. You can mention that, yes, obviously resource, energy resource, we can mention all those things, like it is coastal region is also helping to reap the energy. So energy resources, mineral resources, and fisheries is one thing. So likewise economic resources. So all these things we can mention. So that is one thing. So we have to mention all those resource potential. Okay, so that is the first part. In the second part, we have to highlight the status of natural hazardness, natural hazard preparedness of this. So what are the different natural hazards that will hit the coastal region? Yes, one would be tsunamis. There can be tsunamis, there can be cyclones, and there can be any such kind of coastal erosion and coastal marine pollution and such things. So we can say that various measures that have been taken to address the natural hazards. So how we are planned. So basically, when you see in India, there is coastal zone okay. So here if we see in India, we have coastal zone regulations. Are you aware of coastal zone regulations? We have coastal zone regulations. So we have constituted a committee to classify the coastal regions into different zones. So we have done that one. So to just address some of the issues. Okay, so that is one thing. So then, apart from that, if we talk from cyclones point of view, so cyclone, we have done so many, we have built a lot of cyclone shelters, all such things. So here, cyclone risk mitigation measures. Cyclone risk mitigation measures. we have taken. So you have mentioned that things. And even with respect to the tsunamis, we have also established the tsunami early warning systems, tsunami early warning systems in India. So that thing also we can quote. And all such kind of measures we can say, and we can just highlight the disaster natural hazard preparedness. Okay, so that is one important aspect. So that's how you have to mention, and some of these steps are the disaster preparedness. So that's how you have to address the second part of the answer. Okay, so that is one thing. So that's the second portion where you have to address. So then finally you can conclude the answer by highlighting the need to protect and conserve the coastal region. So why we have to protect and why we have to conserve the coastal line. So here you can say, due to immense significance of the coastal region, we have to protect and we have to highlight and we have to just conserve the coastal region. Likewise you can say, and you can just conclude. Okay, so that's how you can pick the lines. So that is with reference to one question. So then the next question from geography section is that it is identify and assess and discuss the factors responsible for diversity of natural vegetation in India, and assess the significance of wildlife sanctuaries in rainforest regions of India. So here question is in two parts. So when 15 marker question is there, obviously they will give two parts. So in introduction, how you can introduce means you can provide a brief account on the natural vegetation and types of natural vegetation that are available in India. Okay, so there are different types of vegetation in India. So what are the different types we can have? India has different varied vegetation, like evergreen forests are there, deciduous forests are there, and yes, mangrove forests are there. So you can mention all types of the natural vegetation. So then still you can just mention in the next, you can mention enumerate classification of natural vegetation. Also you can say tropical vegetation, like all such things, temperate. Then you can mention all such types in a systematic manner. So that is that you can do in the next portion. Then in the body portion, you can mention, you can discuss first thing as factors responsible for diversity of natural vegetation. So there you can mention various aspects. Yes, obviously. Yes. So one thing what you can do is, when we are talking about different factors responsible for natural vegetation, diverse natural vegetation, one thing you can talk about the advantage of climate and climatic variations. Climate and climatic variations. You can say that in India is majorly monsoonal. India has majorly monsoonal climate, and India can be divided into tropical as well as subtropical regions. So due to availability of climatic variations, tropical vegetation is also available and subtropical like temperate vegetation is also available. So there we can mention, along with different regions, we can mention that thing. So climatic regions is one thing. So then we have geographical diversity also. We have geographical diversity. You can mention this as another important factor responsible for natural vegetation, presence of natural vegetation. That is one important thing. Then you can also bring in climate itself, you can talk about the monsoons also, monsoons and monsoonal impact. Then you can also mention about different types of soils and variations in soils. Variations in soils. So this is another important factors that is responsible for the development of vivid natural vegetation. So that is one important thing. So then availability of water resources. Availability of water resources. So we can also talk about the drainage system. drainage system. So if we talk in Himalayan region, we can have the perennial rivers, availability of perennial rivers, like it can be Indus, it can be the Ganga, or it can be the Brahmaputra region. So entire belt of Himalayan region is blessed with perennial rivers. So that is one factor. And if you see in peninsular region, if you see the central portion, like east central and central eastern portions, like Chhattisgarh region, we have Dandakaranya vegetation, so Dandakaranya forest. So this region is also blessed with some of the peninsular rivers. So that's half. And if you see in coastal regions, mangrove, where we can see mangrove forests and all these things, this is blessed with the coastal region. So all types are possible. So these are different factors that are responsible for the vivid natural vegetation. Okay, so that is one important thing. So then we have also next part of the question is we also have to highlight the significance of wildlife sanctuaries in the rainforest region. Okay, peculiarly the question is asking from rainforest region. So here you have to keep a heading like significance of wildlife sanctuaries in rainforest region. Then you have to mention what are wildlife sanctuaries, basically. What are wildlife sanctuaries? And then you have to highlight the significance of these in rainforest region. So that is one thing. So what are the factors, or what is the significance of wildlife sanctuaries? That is one important aspect. So significance of wildlife sanctuaries. When we talk from that perspective, wildlife sanctuaries, basically they help in one thing, that is they help in conservation of biodiversity. So this is one important thing. Conservation of biodiversity. This is one important thing. So that is done by wildlife. This is the basic objective why wildlife sanctuaries will be there. Okay. And apart from conservation, so wildlife sanctuaries are also responsible for research and studies, ecological studies. They are also helping for systematic research works and ecological studies of this region. So you have to mention they play a vital role in the research and development research works with respect to these regions, and they will also help in ecological studies. So that is one thing. So that's half. Then next point you can mention that wildlife sanctuaries are also having recreational and cultural significance. We can use these things for tourism and for educational purposes. Tourism and educational purposes. So that is one important significance of the wildlife sanctuaries in this region. Okay. And other important thing is that they also have cultural and spiritual significance. Cultural and spiritual significance. That means there are so many associated cultural and spiritual benefits. You can talk about them also. So it will also serve various indigenous and local communities to as a region where they can habitat for their region. So likewise, so you can talk about the cultural and spiritual connotations of that, and then you can go for the conclusion of the answer. So one part, it is with respect to factors responsible for the vivid natural vegetation. Another part, it is with respect to significance of wildlife sanctuaries in wildlife region. So that's how you can pick these subheads and you can explain these subheads. Okay, and then finally in conclusion you can mention that how India's natural vegetation is a complex interplay of climatic and topographical factors. That means how natural vegetation in India is is dependent upon the climatic factors as well as topographical factors, because the chief question is on the natural vegetation. Okay, so you have to highlight and you have to systematically quote the richness of the natural vegetation, and thus you can conclude the answer. Okay, so that is one important aspect. So that is with respect to the sixth question. And then seventh question is with respect to how did the human development fail to keep in pace with the economic development in India. Actually, this question is beautifully interlinked with the economy section. So they have picked the human geography. In human geography, we have demographic factors. In demography, we have human development. So they have picked that and they have linked it with economic development. So recently, if you look from the India's Economic Survey 2022 and 2023, the Economic Survey 2022 and 23 claims that India has emerged as a fifth largest economy in the world. Okay, so Economic Survey of India claimed likewise. So here, despite of being the fifth largest economy in the world, that means this highlights the level of economic development of India. Are you getting that? So being a fifth largest economy, still we lag in the human development in India. This can be visualized, or this can be substantiated, or this can be seen with respect to the Human Development Index that is being released by UNDP and Oxfam. So there is Human Development Index. So this Human Development Index showcases that India ranks 132nd position, which is very, very, very poor compared with our neighbors. That is one important aspect. So we have to highlight that despite being the fifth largest economy in the world, still India lacks, or India ranks very poor in the UNDP's Human Development Index. So you can say in the introduction that by quoting these two things, you can show that there is a stark contrast in the India's economic and human development, or there is a clear-cut disparity between the economic and human development in India. So then the question is asking why there is disparities there. So you have to mention and you have to highlight the reasons and factors responsible for this gap. So there you have to talk about the two aspects. So factors responsible for such kind of existence of gap between them. So what are the various factors? What are the various factors means despite, okay. Yes. Simply, we can mention about various factors that are responsible for the lag in human development. So here we can mention various factors, like we can highlight some things like things related to poverty and unemployment. It is one important factor. Poverty and unemployment. You can highlight that despite of having economic development, India is also plagued with some of the vital issues like the poverty and unemployment. There you can mention the statistics related to poverty and unemployment. Okay, so that is one important thing. And then you can highlight the level of income inequalities that are there. Income inequalities. So you can highlight that despite having the economic development, still India is plagued with the income inequalities and economic disparities are still prevailing. So economic and socio-economic disparities. So this is another important cause. Socio-economic disparities. This is another factor responsible for low human development. Okay, socio-economic disparities, gaps in between the social parameters as well as the economic parameters. So that is one important thing. So then here itself you can also talk about the gender inequality that is prevailing. Okay, inequalities. Inequalities includes income inequality, gender inequality, all those factors you can talk there. And then you can also talk about some important things like rural and urban divide. Rural urban divide. By this you can state the regional disparities. Regional disparities are also a cause of concern for the human development. So human development is linked with all the aspects. So in India we can see rural and urban divide, and thus we have regional disparities. So regional disparities is also one of the important cause. Okay, and apart from this there are other factors, generic factors like some issues like corruption and maladministration. So this is also one factor why we lack in human development. So you can mention such factors related to governance related things. Yes, obviously we can also talk about the challenges with respect to health sector. So challenges with respect to health sector, how this will also impacting human development. It is in all manners, like social manner, physical manner, psychological manner, likewise. So we can mention all such kind of things. Okay, so ideally we will have the space and time constraints. So any 4 to 5 points you can pick and you can explain 4 to 5 points. Okay, so that is one thing. So then you also have to mention some of the measures to address these issues. Some measures to address these issues. So what measures you can take and how can you improve the human development index? For example, you can say that like we have to take some of the important poverty eradication measures and we have to take some of the measures with respect to reduction of unemployment. So we can take like, we can mention such measures which have been taken and what has to be taken, what has to be done. So that can be mentioned. And to reduce inequalities, we can say, and we can highlight some of the measures, how to reduce income inequalities, how to reduce the gender inequalities. So such factors we can say, and we can just address. So such things, measures that we have to take to reduce these things. So that how can we improve the human development index? So that is one important thing. So those measures have to be addressed. So what measures to be taken to reduce the socio-economic disparities or governance related like corruption related things have to be addressed. So such things we have to say, and we have to address the demand of the question. So that is one thing. So then in the conclusion, we have to highlight the role and significance of human development in achieving the economic growth and development, and you can conclude the answer. Here you can also talk about significance of achieving sustainable development goals, United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. If you need to achieve the sustainable development goals, one of the important vital aspect that you have to have is achieving human development. So if you talk from sustainable development goals, first goal was with respect to zero hunger, then zero poverty, and then you have health. So all of these things are linked with the human development. So you have, in order to achieve the sustainable development goals, it is very, very important to focus on the human development and various aspects of the human development. So that's how you have to mention and you have to conclude. Okay, so that is one important thing. So then the last question from geography section is from being a food importer in 1960s, India has emerged as a net food exporter in the world. So provide the reasons. So that is the question. So here the question shall have to, we need to have the knowledge from the paper 3 also. So here how can you state or how can you start the answer means, in introduction, you can highlight the statistical data related to India's imports and exports. India's imports and exports. You need to recollect at the time of 1960s. Even in the class also, while discussing related to agriculture, we have discussed about in 1960s what were the issues, like we had India-China war and India-Pakistan war. So actually this led to lot of shortage, food shortage, and we used to depend mostly on the imports from other countries. So you have to highlight the data related to that, and then you have to interlink the current data. So from economic survey, you have to pick the current data of exports and imports, and you have to mention. So currently we are doing this much exports likewise. And then you have to show that India is one of the largest exporters in the world. So if we talk from some of the agricultural things like basmati rice, India is the leading exporter. And if we talk from the wheat, India is the leading exporter. So we can say in the introduction these points. Okay, so important thing is that here you also require the factual knowledge. You also require the factual knowledge. So this time tactically UPSC has picked, and UPSC is checking all types of knowledge. One thing factual knowledge, another thing analytical knowledge, other thing the applicative knowledge, where you have to interlink one concept with other concept, one subject with other subject. So likewise UPSC has tactically checked all the qualities as it faced some of the issues with pre. So most probably UPSC might have got picked such kind of stances. But to be frank and to be precise, this question paper was, in one way, it was moderate to tough. It was moderate to tough because it's not a cakewalk. Because if you have the knowledge of geography, you can answer. You cannot answer. You need to have the knowledge of economic aspects. You need to have the knowledge of entire subjects. So likewise, so environment ecology, without disaster management, it's not possible. So all knowledge, they are trying to check the consolidated knowledge. So still we haven't moved to GS paper 3, but we are writing all the answers related to GS paper 3 mostly likewise. So it's there in that manner. So you keep your preparation in this manner. Okay, do not neglect likewise. So like how you can just introduce your answer, and then in the body. So what you have to address is, the chief question is talking about factors and reasons that are responsible for the substantial growth in the agricultural productivity. So when we have growth in agricultural productivity, then only we can export. Otherwise, if the agricultural product produce is not sufficient to cater the people here itself, then how can we go for exporting the crops? We cannot go for that. So we have to highlight what are the factors that are responsible for the substantial growth in agricultural productivity, and thus which led to exports. So here you have to systematically mention various factors. So what factors we can mention here is that first important factor is very important thing which has happened in the 1960s to 70s region, that is, it is Green Revolution. Green Revolution. So you have to talk about the Green Revolution and its role in enhancing the agricultural productivity. Okay, so that is one important thing. And then after Green Revolution, the support from the government and various initiatives taken by the government with respect to improving the agriculture. So government's initiatives and measures, government support, I'm just mentioning it as government support in terms of, it can be initiatives, it can be the programs, or it can be all such things. So we can mention these things. So here you can quote all the you can mention all the initiatives taken by the government which helped in, yes, everything. You can mention 5-year plan also, like systematically how they have picked. If you talk from the point of after independence, we haven't adapted the, we haven't gone for the balanced growth model. We have adapted unbalanced growth model. First, we have tried to focus on agriculture, and then we have moved on to industries, and then we have started focusing on the services sector. So in the initial days, we haven't picked the balanced growth model. Balanced growth model means focusing equally on all the sectors, primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. The government did not pick that mode. Rather, it focused primarily on improving the agriculture. So that was one step. So in the earlier 5-year plans, we have focused on improving agriculture. So that also you can mention. Okay, so that is one important thing. So then next things are that slowly we have also focused on various aspects like crop diversification. Crop diversification. Crop diversification is also broadly responsible for growth of agricultural productivity in India. Crop diversification. Usually, if you talk from the Green Revolution 1960s point of view, we have introduced Green Revolution with respect to wheat, and then we have introduced Green Revolution for rice. So during the same period in 1960s, we have also announced MSP for some agricultural crops like wheat. So actually this step has created a kind of encouragement for the farmers, and slowly we have also moved on to diversification of the crops. Diversification of the crops here in the sense moving towards different types of cultivation of different types of crops. Farmer not only cultivates the wheat, he also cultivates the rice, he also cultivates the other crops like pulses, the other crops. So crop diversification is one important factor. Okay, then next thing is that agricultural developments with respect to various inputs. We can talk here with respect to the infrastructural development in agriculture. We can talk with respect to the irrigational measures, irrigational techniques, how irrigation has led to development of agriculture and agricultural productivity. And then we can also talk about the role of technology, role of e-technology in agriculture. E-technology in agriculture. So technology and particularly e-technology, information communication technology. So role of technology in developing agriculture. So we can say that all of these factors have led to rise in the agricultural productivity. Okay, so apart from this, demand, global demand is one important aspect. Yes. Obviously, so we can mention like LPG reforms. LPG reforms are new economic reforms. New economic reforms have also led to cross the barriers that are existing, international barriers that are existing. So liberalization, privatization, and globalization have led to globalization has led to infusement of technology, and liberalization have led to arising of some restrictions. So all such kind of things have further accentuated. So you can mention all such points and you can just address the demand portion. So that's how, and then you can conclude the answer with by providing the contribution of this in achieving the sustainable development goals. So we have a lot of sustainable development goals like zero hunger, poverty, unemployment, and health, all these things. So we can link that with this aspect. So how this improvement in agricultural productivity has helped to achieve the sustainable development goals. So you can link and you can highlight and you can say that that's how India has achieved these things. So that is one important aspect. So these are related to the questions related to geography section. Okay. So then next important section we have is the Indian society. So this year's paper is dominated by society, Indian society. And even in the class also I have said like there might be possibility of more tilting towards Indian society because societal issues, social issues were in news. Okay. So if we basically see the topics that have been selected from society section are these topics. So first topic they have picked is marriage and changes in the perception of change in the perception of marriage in modern India. So that is one thing. So this topic is from salient features of Indian society. So marriage is one of the important features of Indian society. So then next topic they have picked is problems faced by the women or issues faced by the women. So that is from second topic. So here in this also they have systematically and tactically picked the increased rates of suicides among young women in Indian society. So reasons for that, they have picked that topic. So third topic is impact of mobile phones on child socialization, and thus they are trying to check the impact of technology on the various sections of the various society. So children are one important section in society. So how technology is impacting children, so that is one important aspect. Then next topic is urbanization and its impact on the poor people in the urban region. Urbanization. So if you happen to look, the topics here are more or less direct. They are not much difficult when compared with the geography section. Whereas geography section, it definitely needs analytical skills, factual knowledge, and applicative knowledge. Everything you need to have there. But here, if you have the questions are more or less generic in nature, and topics are also very generic, and they were also were there in news. And the next topic was caste system. They have picked the caste system, and they have picked and they have tried to locate the fluid and static nature of caste identity in nature. So how caste is a static entity and how caste is a dynamic entity. So that is the key. Then impact of post-liberal economy on ethnic identity and communalism. So the chief zone of theme, central theme was on communalism. So communalism. So that was one thing. So only except this question, all other questions were generic in nature, generic and current oriented questions with the basic and general understanding of the functioning of the society. You can write answers for that. Okay. So that is one thing. So this is the topics that have been picked by UPSC in society section. Okay. So what was the first question in that? It was related to marriage. So it is asking, the question is asking that, do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India? Marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India. So this is one thing, one question. Here, if you look in the question, for the first time UPSC made a silly mistake like using some slight grammatical errors. Like it has used the word like losing. Actually, we should not use the word losing. Losing is used for different meaning. Loss. They are trying to ask marriage as a social institution, it is loose in the sense not here LOSE. We should not use LOSING. That word should be there. That was one slight grammatical error made by UPSC this time. So they also have to take care of such things. So here, how you can approach this question means, in the introduction, you can define basically what is marriage. So you can say that marriage is a universal social institution and which is present across the world. So there you can say simply that from traditional Indian ethos or traditional Indian perspective, traditional Indian culture point of view, marriage is considered as a sacred institution, because in the life cycle of a man, grihastha, when we talk from the point of grihastha, different ashramas are there. Amongst that, grihastha is one of the important ashrama. So amongst that, marriage is considered as a dharma, like marriage is considered as a dharma from traditional Indian ethos perspective. But due to various factors like globalization, westernization, modernization, and all other such kind of factors, marriage is subjected to changes in various aspects. It can be with respect to the form of the marriage, it can be with respect to the nature of the marriage, or it can be with respect to types of marriage, or it can be with respect to various other aspects. Marriage is subjected to changes. So basically, if we talk from the nature of marriage, usually from cultural Indian ethos point of view, we used to consider it as a dharma. From dharma, now it has been changed into a mere contractual agreement in between two people. Mere contractual agreement. So they are asking about this thing. Nowadays, if you see, marriage is not considered as such a sacred thing. If we talk from the earlier days point of view, once married is married forever. There is no issue of giving divorce to a particular person. But due to increased liberalization, increased feminization, increased westernization, due to all these factors, there is rise in the divorce rates and desertion rates in marriage. So the question is asking, what are the reasons for increased divorce and desertion rates, and what are the reasons or factors responsible for changes in the marriage system, change in the nature of marriage system. So that is the chief demand that they are picking. So here what we can do in the body portion is simply you have to discuss, you have to highlight that marriage as a social institution has been transformed in modern times in terms of its nature and form. You have to say what was the original nature and how it got transformed. So original nature was, it used to be considered as dharma, and now it has been transformed as a mere contractual agreement. And then you have to talk about changes in the forms of marriage. So earlier we used to have some forms of marriage. So this is from nature point of view. What was the nature and how the nature of marriage is changing. And next thing you have to talk about form of marriage. Form of marriage, how it is changed. Yes. 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 Which one? Related to contractual agreement? No, that's what. See, we are talking about change in the nature of marriage. So usually, when we are talking here from the features of Indian society, most probably we will consider India majoritarianly it is dominated by Hindu religion, one thing. And here the features, whatever the features that are there, followed by majority sections, is considered as one way. So from that point of view, if we talk from that perspective, it will come likewise. Are you getting that? Yes. Yes. So, no, directly, actually, question is directly asking like the why this thing is changing. That means the question, if you see, if you look at the question again, for example, question, chief demand of the question, do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India? So, in introduction, what we can say, we should not directly address whether it is losing its relevance or whether it is losing its traditional value. Here we can, simply we can say that from traditional Indian ethos point of view, what is the nature of marriage? So, from traditional Indian ethos point of view, marriage is considered as a sacred entity. That thing we have to say. That thing we have to say. And here the question is asking whether it is losing that or not. In body, you have to explain marriage is somehow, it became a fragile thing in the sense it is not following the traditional ethos, but slightly there are some changes. That's what we are trying, we are saying, and in the first part of the answer we are trying to highlight how is it getting loosened, how is it getting deviated from its traditional ethos from that point of view. Yes. Marriage is not using. Marriage is a social institution. So here they are talking that marriage as a sacrament is losing value in modern. Sacrament in the sense which is we should not only simply say from one perspective. We have to say entire aspects. We have to say entire aspects of the marriage. Are you getting? Entire aspects of the marriage we have to say. For example, how it is changing its nature, how it is changing in its form, how it is changing in types, how it is changing in other aspects also, features of marriage. We have to generally address. We should not pick any particular thing, and we have to highlight likewise. We have to generally address marriage as a social institution. We should not allocate anything to any particular religion. It is not related to any particular religion. It is related to a social institution. So we have to say likewise. From that perspective, we have to address. Yeah, okay. Sorry. So here, if we talk from the perspective of recent things, what are the changes in the form of marriage? Changes in the form of marriage means traditionally, if you see in India, like we used to have some forms of marriage, like it can be, we have like monogamy practice or polygamy practice. So these are the practices that were prevailing from traditional Indian ethos point of view. It is like monogamy or polygamy. So there are other forms, but simply we are picking two important things. And now from these, there are new patterns are getting emerged. So yes, we have sologamy. We were talking about something called sologamy, marrying with one's own self. So if you think from that point of view, if you think from Indian cultural ethos point of view, in modern India, in ancient India or in traditional India, we used to see such kind of patterns. But now it is changing to this thing. Now in this thing, what happens? Generally, marriage is considered as a bond between two individuals. Traditionally, if you see the definitions. But now the entire concept of marriage has changed, altered. So where sologamy means marrying within oneself. So marrying with one person herself. So that is one important thing. So that's how it is changing in its nature. And then if we talk from the point of types of marriage, yes, types of marriage. Nowadays, traditionally, if we see, we used to have two kinds of measures, two kinds of types, like endogamy and exogamy. Endogamy means marrying within one's own group, like for example, marrying within one's own caste group, marrying within one's own religious group. So that practice is known as endogamy. Or in some people, they will marry within outside their group. So that practice is known as exogamy. Such kind of practices were there. Mostly endogamy was prevalent from the traditional Indian point of view. But in modern India, we can see intercaste marriages, we can see interfaith marriages, that is interreligious marriages, intercaste and interfaith religious. So all these things in one way, that is changing in these things we can see changes in the type of marriage practices. So you have to highlight and you have to mention. So these are various aspects that we can see in the modern India. Likewise. And from the other important evolving form is the same-sex marriages. Same-sex marriages. So this is another important new trend in marriage system. So it can be sologamy, it can be like same-sex marriages. They were in use also recently. Demands with respect to legalization of same-sex marriages or criminalization or decriminalization of same-sex marriages. So these things were in use. So that's how UPSC has picked. So traditionally, if we consider, marriage is used to be as a bond between a man and a woman. So from that, now the perspective has changed from that point of view to sologamy, or they are same-sex marriages. So that's how we have to say there is change in that. And then in the next part of the answer, what we have to say, yes, that is new trend. Live-in relations also. Live-in relations is also one thing. So same-sex marriages are like sologamy, live-in relations, they are escalating. So live-in relations, traditionally if we see, there was no Indian culture, in Indian culture there was no such trends, but these are emerging. So live-in relations is also one important change. So all of these things have tried to shake, all of these things tried to alter the traditional nature of the marriage. So that's how the question is asking one thing, like, do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India? Because we have to say that traditionally what was the nature, and you have to say that what are the evolving patterns of patterns in marriage, and you have to say that in the second part, what are the factors that are responsible for changes. That means highlight the role of westernization, modernization, urbanization and globalization, all these things. Actually, marriage, if these things wouldn't have been there, like westernization, globalization, modernization and urbanization, if these things, if they wouldn't have been there, there might probably not changes in the marriage as a social institution. But due to globalization, there was infusement of spread of cultural things from different parts into different parts of the world. That was one thing. And westernization. So if you look from westernization point of view, there is influence of Western culture on different parts of the world. So tendency to adapt the Western features, Western cultural features, which are claimed to be some advanced practices. That is one factor responsible for change in this. And modernization. People are trying to adapt the modern values. Modern values in the sense here, we have lot of things like feminization, and we also talking about democratization, like giving values to democratic values, equality, or liberty, freedom, freedom of liberty of freedom and liberty, freedom of freedom to choose their own right to freedom to choose their own spouse. So that is also one thing in feminism. So likewise, so all of these things have brought some changes in the marriage. So you have to say these things. And in the conclusion, what you have to say that although there are some changes in the marriage as a social institution, but we cannot claim that marriage as a sacrament is losing its stance in modern India. We have to say that marriage is not losing its sacrament, but marriage is altering in its form and nature. That doesn't mean that marriage is losing its sacrament. See, we have to go with change is the constant thing. So change is obvious. So we have to evolve by the changes that are happening. So in the similar fashion, marriage also, it's changing. Rather, it is not losing its sacrament. Okay, because we have to incorporate all other aspects likewise. So in the conclusion, you can say that although it might be subjected to changes, it is not losing its value as a sacred entity in India's traditional ethos point of view. That's how we can say. Okay, so that's how you can say, and that's how you can answer. See, one thing, if we talk from some objective subjects like in geography, answer would be objective. And if we talk from these social issues and societal concepts, they are more of analytical in nature and more of subjective in nature. We can argue anyhow. That's how in society we can have more discussions and debates and heated arguments there likewise. So as these questions are subjective in nature, we can have different opinions. But in UPSC, our answer should be more or less diplomatic, and we should not be biased in any way. We should not be biased. So how we can be diplomatic means, in one way they are saying that marriage as a sacrament losing its value in modern India. And they are saying, do you agree with this thing? Or do you think with this? So we have to say arguments in favor of this and arguments against this. Likewise, in the conclusion, we have to say, despite there are some changes, it is not losing grossly its sacredness. Majority of the people still they are following the same old forms and same old nature. Marriage is in there. So slight variations is possible because India is a land of, India is an epitome of world. Okay, likewise you can say. Okay, so that is one thing. So that's how the first question. So then second question is talking about explain why suicide among young women is increasing in Indian society. Why suicides are increasing in tendency. So that is one question. So central theme of the question is based on the problems faced by the women in Indian society. Okay. So in introduction, what you have to do, you have to incorporate two things. One is you have to highlight the problems faced by women in Indian society. You have to say that women in Indian society are facing problems from their womb to tomb in all their entire life cycle. So you have to introduce that first part. And then you have to say next, in the same paragraph, in the next point, you have to say that amongst all the problems faced by women, suicides is a major cause of concern at present. So that thing you have to highlight. And in next paragraph, you have to substantiate your point that how suicides are increasing. So for this, how you have to say means, you have to substantiate this with the NCRB's data. So usually NCRB, National Crime Reports Bureau, will publish the data, will publish data related to various crimes and various issues. So here, National Crime NCRB has also tried to publish the data on suicides. So in the next paragraph, in the introduction itself, you can write a connecting paragraph where you can talk about the data related to NCRB. So you can say that the recent 2020s and 21s NCRB data, if we see, there were roughly around 1 lakh suicides. 1 lakh suicides, more than 1 lakh suicides in India. And amongst these suicides, roughly 45,000 suicides are related to women. 45,000 suicides are related to women. So here that means roughly around 50% of suicides are with women. So we have to show these kind of statistical data, and we have to mention that if we compare from 2020's data, in 2021's data, there was rise in the suicide rates. So you have to climb the data from 20 and 21, and then you have to say that there is rise in the suicides likewise. So then you have to address the demand of the portion. So that should be your introduction. You have to say problems faced by women, and one of the major cause of concern amongst women is the suicides. So that's how. So in the body portion, you have to highlight the reasons and factors behind such increased rate of suicides. Okay, factors and reasons. You have to highlight the issues faced by women and how these issues are leading to women's suicides. Okay, so you have to highlight all such kind of things. So here, why women's suicides are increasing? What are the factors behind rise in the women's suicides? So there are so many factors. One thing is, obviously. So yes, one thing is related to the after the marriage. There are so many marriage payments like dowry system. So we can say one thing as like dowry system and dowry related deaths. Dowry system and dowry related deaths. That is one thing. Yes. Yes. Economic freedom. So economic freedom, not economic freedom in the sense it's not directly economic freedom. Restrictions. Discrimination we can have. Okay. Yes. Children, obviously. Yes. Yes. Yes, obviously, see, life cycle issues. We were talking, that's what, in introduction, we were talking about life cycle issues. We were talking from women are facing issues from womb to term. Womb to term in the sense, from birth onwards, they will start facing issues, and till death, it will continue. In this process, there are so many life cycle issues faced by. So what he's trying to point out, or what he's trying to say, is that NCRP has tried to explain this life cycle issues faced and how the women are, how the suicides are linked with this life cycle issues. Okay, so in the earlier days, in the childhood days, when they are with the, when they are in the hands of parents, so then there are so many issues, and then during the marriage and after the marriage, there are some issues that are faced by women, and during in the old age and at the time of their death, even they face lot of issues. So that's how like he's trying to say. Okay, more or less like we can categorize systematically, rather in general form, like what are the various factors that are responsible. Okay, so this is one thing is related to issues related to marriage. So that is one thing. And this other thing is like increased crimes, like crime against women, increased crime against women, crimes against women, crime against women. Here, including this can be crimes. In crimes, we can talk simply like domestic violence is one thing, and we can also talk from the perspective of the sexual harassment at workplace, sexual harassment at workplace. So that is one thing. And yes, yes, workload and mental health issues. So that is one thing. And if we talk from crime against women, like cyber bullying, and issues with respect to pornography, now deep fakes, all such kind of things have got. So women have been pulled into such kind of issues, so which are provoking them to go for suicides. So such kind of things are increasing. So that is one thing. So then apart from this, there are no. So apart from this, other general factors like things like inequalities. So gender inequality, gender discrimination, lack of liberty, lack of freedom, so lack of all such kind of things, are mental stigma, mental stigmas and issues related to such psychological issues. So simply they were all some of the things. And even if we talk from the marriage point of view, early marriage, obviously, so that is also one thing. Like in society we have some issues like sun meta preference. We have the issue like sun meta preference. So without understanding how a baby is born, so in the society the issue of childbirth is being linked with females. So usually, like in search of sun meta preference, for example, if a woman is not giving birth to male child, then obviously she will be secluded, or she will be boycotted, or she would be given divorce, or like man will engage in marrying multiple marriages likewise. So such issues are there. So these kind of things, like such kind of sun meta preference issue, is also creating some psychological burden and mental issues on the women. So all of these factors are responsible for increased suicide rates in women. Okay, so such things you have to quote and you have to mention such aspects. So that is with respect to the first part. Okay, so in second part, slowly you can mention, or to small extent you can mention measures that we can take to address these issues. How can we arrest, or what support that we can give to women to evade from such kind of issues? So that we can mention slightly, and then we can conclude the answer stating that we can take any quote from Rabindranath Tagore, or we can take any quote from the Mahatma Gandhi, or anyone, and we can say, we can highlight that in order to achieve the economic growth or development, it is not possible for if we incorporate only men. So we have to highlight the role of women in nation building, and we have to highlight that the need to address the issue. Okay, so that's how we can conclude the answer. So that is with respect to this question. Okay, see, look here, these questions, things related to society, again, these are subjective in nature. We cannot give any objective answer for the questions. So that's how more and more points we can incorporate. But we should not get carried away with the too many points. Problem would be that we will have space constraints and we will have the word constraints, word limit also. So any 6 to 7 points, as it is been from it is in 10 marker question. So it has been asked in 10 marker question. Roughly you can pick any 5 to 6 points and you can explain them in 2 to 3 lines. So that makes it the body. Okay, do not carry away with more number of points. There you will face lot of issues. So likewise, so that is one thing. So then next question is related to impact of technology on socialization process. Look at the question. Child cuddling is now being replaced by mobile phones, and discuss its impact on the socialization process. So in this society, if you see, one of the important problem with the aftermath of development of technology is this thing. Nowadays, if you see in this society, in every home, there would be lot of mobile phones, and these mobile phones, there is no restrictions or there is no proper regulation of the usage of mobile phones by the children. And earlier in society, what used to happen means parents used to spend more time with their children. Parents used to spend more time with their children. Now the parents are busy with their works. So as there is rise in dual nature of employment in the homes, here both mother and father, they are going for employment. So these factors are leading to give less attention towards the children. And here one major way they have picked to manage the children is using some technological aids, like giving mobile phones or making them to watch mobile TVs or such kind of things. So this question tries to ask or being from that perspective. So in introduction, what you have to say that the chief central theme of the question is, one thing is on the socialization, impact of technology and socialization process. Here you can say, you can define what is socialization there. You can define socialization. Socialization is the process through which a child will learn various aspects by mingling with the other members of the society. So that process is known as socialization. So you have to basically define socialization. What is socialization? And then you have to highlight that socialization is being impacted by various technological aspects, and amongst that, mobile phones is one of the important factors that is affecting the process of socialization. Okay, in introduction you have to say likewise. Then in the body portion, you have to explain and discuss various positive and negative impacts of mobile phone and technology on the socialization process. Okay, here you have to say, when children used to socialize with their family members, you can think the role of grandparents. You can think the role of grandparents. Grandparents were the first philosophers in their life. They used to just give morals, tell moral stories and tales, all such kind of things. So these things used to mold the children into a good moral being in the society. But as this process has been replaced by mobile phones, now the child's mentality is altogether, it is evolving in a different fashion. Like children has started using mobile games, like think of the small games like Pokemon Go or all such recent games. So they are molding the children's psychology in a different way. So that is one thing. And then if we talk from the perspective of parents, mother is the first teacher in the life of a child. So mother will teach various aspects. And here, when mother is busy with her works, to compensate or to just divert the attention, so they are giving mobiles and they are just engaging in their own works. So this is also impacting the socialization process. And then if we talk from the father is nothing but the first hero in the life of a child. So usually role of father will be tremendous on a particular child. So when all these things are replaced by mobile phones, so there are so many issues or so many aspects that are being faced by the children in their later portion of the life. So what's happening means, if we talk from the consequences of this thing, one thing is that children are becoming more introverts in thing. They are becoming more introverts, and by being introverts, their social, their economic, and their educational and all other aspects of children are getting hampered. So that is one thing. And here some people, as they are not getting socialized properly in their childhood, some people are facing some of the defects with respect to speech, and defects with respect to language. Defects with respect to language development, speech development and language development, such impact is there on the children. Okay, so that is one thing. Okay, or even we can say like delayed speech development or delayed language development. So such issues are there. Okay, and as they are not getting socialized with the people normally, there are issues with respect to various social values like decreased empathy, decreased social awareness likewise. So social values like empathy and decreased social awareness, so such kind of issues are children are facing. Okay, so that is one thing. And as they are becoming introverts, children are more likely to tend towards isolation. They are preferring more of loneliness, and they are not in the later portion of their lives, they are not trying to mingle with the elders or others. Okay, so this is one way. It is leading to more individuation. So they would like to take their decisions, they would like to be alone, they would like to be isolated. That is one issue. So individuation, this is leading to individuation. So individualism is different, individuation is different. So individualism means being self-dependent, that is different. But here what's happening, individuation, the children are trying to be always in an isolated state, or they would like to spend with them. So that is one thing. So that is also one important thing. And one another important aspect that shapes the child is that in the childhood period, they shall have to have active physical activity. So when they are spending more time with the mobile phones or such kind of technological gadgets, what is happening means there is reduced physical activity. So when physical activity is getting reduced, so in the later portions of their life, they are facing a lot of issues. That means they are not participating in the sports, they're not participating in the games, and they would like to entirely spend their times with these mobile phones or technological gadgets. So in the earlier or later portion or later half of their life, within within very early ages, they are prone to lifestyle disorders. Lifestyle disorders. Usually, if we talk from some of the lifestyle disorders like blood pressure, hypertension, and the diabetes. So all of these things, as their physical activity is reduced, they are leading a sedentary lifestyle. So this sedentary lifestyle is causing lot of lifestyle disorders or diseases like development of hypertension or development of diabetes in early stages of their life. So it can be obesity, it can be diabetes, or it can be hypertension. So all such things children are facing. So such issues are being faced. Okay, and other thing is that as they are not socializing, they are also unable to address some of the social problems. So their social problem skills have got impaired. Social problems, if they face any issue in the society, they should know how to solve those problems. So due to excessive use of mobile phones and excessive use of the technological gadgets, they are failing, or there is a gross impairment in the problem solving, societal problem solving skills and problem solving abilities. And when they are using these technological gadgets, one thing is that there would be a lot of negative online impacts. So in the very early age, children are exposing to a lot of the negative aspects in the society. So that is one important thing. And they are also prone to a lot of cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is one another important things. Nowadays, children, they themselves are opening YouTube accounts, okay, and they themselves are posting, and there are a lot of such kind of things. So okay, so that is one thing. So these are all nothing but in various ways how the socialization is getting impacted. Okay, so that is with respect to impact of mobile phones on socialization process. Here we also have to just slightly mention how we can just overcome from such issues. So we can talk about like keeping some restrictions on screen time for the children. That means you can use this much time freely for the mobile. Likewise, we can keep such screen times, or we can also promote them to pursue physical activities. So we have to mention some of the measures what they can go, and that's how we can just address the second part of the question. So finally, we can conclude the answer by highlighting the need for adapting balanced socialization in the society. So we have to say how socialization would be helpful for a child in his later portion of the life. So we have to say, and we have to highlight the need for adapting balanced socialization. So that's how we can conclude the answer. Okay, so that is one thing. So then the next question is with respect to urbanization. So here question is, urbanization led to more segregation or marginalization of poor in the Indian metropolises. This is the question. So the central theme of the question is on urbanization and its impact on the poor people. So in the introduction, what you have to do is that you have to define urbanization, what is urbanization, and then you have to mention slightly various problems associated with urbanization. So urbanization is posing a lot of problems in the society, like increased crime rate or increased all such kind of things you have to mention. And at the end of your introduction, you have to say that urbanization is also posing a serious impact on the poor people living in the urban regions. So you have to just introduce that line. So then in the body portion, you have to keep a subheading stating that impact of urbanization on the poor people. So how urbanization is impacting the poor people. So how it is impacting the poor people means you can say urbanization is yielding more economic disparities in the society, socio-economic disparities. Urbanization is aggravating socio-economic disparities in the society. So that is one thing. And then there is rise in informal settlements. Do you remember what are informal settlements? So informal settlements means people who will live in the footpaths or homeless people. So homelessness is one issue that is one of the problem posed by urbanization. So what urbanization is doing? So one problem is that it is leading to socio-economic disparities. Socio-economic disparities. Rise in socio-economic disparities. Okay, so that is one thing. So then second thing is like rise in homelessness or rise in informal settlements. Rise in informal settlements. This is one another thing. So that is one thing. So that's how also it is being posing problem to poor people. Poor people are the people who doesn't lack the shelter, who lacks the shelter. So homelessness is one important problem that is being faced by poor people. Okay. Then if we talk from other thing, like there would be lot of discrimination with respect to poor people. So that is one another important issue that is faced by them. So other things would be with respect to poor people is that they would be devoid of the facilities. They would be devoid of urban amenities. Urban amenities. That means lack of fair access to all the urban amenities. We can say lack of fair access to urban amenities. Here, amenities will not be equally available to all the people in the urban areas. Those people who had the more resources, they can go for more amenities. They can avail all the amenities of urban region. And poor people, they would be devoid of some urban amenities. So that is one important aspect. So likewise, there are lot of issues that are faced by poor people. So all these factors are leading for increased segregation or marginalization of the poor people. So that is one thing. And what about economic opportunities? Yes, poor people are prone for less economic opportunities. So lack of economic opportunities. Yes. Yes, health issues, sanitation, and things like poverty, unemployment, all such kind of things. Yeah. Yes, access to electricity, access to fresh water, access to drinking water, access to sanitation. So all these things are nothing but some of the issues that are faced by the poor people in the urban region. So all of these issues are marginalizing the poor people in the urban region, or they are segregating the people in the urban areas. So we have to highlight all those factors. Okay, we have to highlight all those factors that are responsible for segregation or marginalization of the poor people. Okay, so that is one thing. Here, in search of employment, education, or economic opportunities, people will move from rural areas to urban areas. So urbanization is nothing but, in simple manner, increased. Yes, it is basically nothing but movement of people from urban areas to rural areas to urban areas, and increased rate of increased rate of concentration of population in the urban areas compared with the adjacent rural areas. That is nothing but urbanization. Here, that is one issue which is posing some issues. So here in the second portion, you also have to highlight some remedial measure to address these issues. How can we overcome these issues in the society? Okay, so what measures we have to take? So that thing we have to address, and finally we have to conclude the answers. So we can say like we have to take appropriate measures to address all these measures, and likewise we can provide way forward and we can conclude that. So that is one thing. So then next question is, why is caste identity in India is both fluid and static? Fluid and static. So the question, central theme of the question is caste and caste system in India. Caste and caste system in India. Here when we see caste or caste system is one of the important and one of the salient feature of Indian society. Okay, so you have to introduce by defining what is caste, and you have to highlight or you have to showcase that caste as one of the salient feature of Indian society. And in next portion you have to highlight or you have to mention the basic characteristics of the caste. So caste system, characteristics of the caste system. So you have to highlight that segmental division of the society or hierarchical arrangement of the society, and caste is rigid, and caste is all such kind of features you have to mention. That is characteristics of the caste you have to mention, and you have to explain how they are making it as a static thing. So here question is related to caste identity. Caste identity, it is both fluid and static. So identity here in the sense, we also have to bring various other aspects like caste is also responsible for the caste is how caste is being divided. Caste is being divided on the basis of one thing is based on occupation. So caste gives occupational identity to the people. Okay, so you have to say a person born into a particular caste used to pursue, in traditional Indian perspective, used to pursue same old occupation. The person who borns in the things like we have in hierarchical or segmental division, it has been divided into Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras. Brahmins, Vaishyas, Sudras, Kshatriyas, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras. So each of these groups have a specific occupation to engage. So from traditional Indian ethos point of view or culture point of view, if you see, caste was rigid and they used to have the occupational homogeneity. Okay, so those factors were making it as static. So likewise we have to say. And then social identity, caste was also responsible for giving social identity to the people. So we have to say that it gives, like a person, for example, a Brahmin will have special identity in the society, and we can, on the basis of that, status would be defined in the society. So all these factors, they are making it as static entity. Static entity means rigid entity. So we have to highlight such kind of things. So then the next portion is, it is fluid. Fluid in the sense, what do you mean by fluid? Yes. Yes, it is how caste is a dynamic entity. Dynamic entity means how it is subjected to changes. So there in the second portion, you have to say that you have to mention various factors that are bringing changes in the caste and caste system and caste identity. You have to focus on that. So various factors that are bringing changes are, there are so many processes like Sanskritization. There are so many processes, some processes like desanskritization or tribalization or democratization or westernization, globalization, modernization. All these things have led to changes in the caste and caste system. So you have to highlight What is Sanskritization? Sanskritization here in the sense, what is that? Sanskritization means, like we were seeing that there was division of society. Like Brahmins were there, Kshatriyas were there, Vaishyas were there, and Shudras were there. So Sanskritization basically means it is a process of social mobility in which a lower caste person tries to imitate and emulate the cultural aspects of the upper caste person or higher strata person, higher strata in the society. So, for example, a Sudra person trying to emulate the practices. For example, from traditional Indian ethos point of view, the lower caste people, it is believed that they used to consume non-vegetarianism, and they used to consume alcohol. So if a person belonging to the lower caste, if he emulates and imitates the higher caste habits, like for example vegetarianism, or going for abstaining consuming alcohol, teetotalism, that is abstaining alcohol. So teetotalism or vegetarianism. So all such things, if a person from belonging to lower caste tries to imitate and emulate these things, that is nothing but an example for Sanskritization. Okay, likewise. And sometimes what may happen, a higher caste person, they may try to imitate and emulate the lower caste cultural features. Like for example, Brahmin assuming the occupation of a Kshatriya. That means a Brahmin may become a ruling person. In history also we have a lot of examples for such kind of things. Like think of the Shatavahanas. When you talk from the Shatavahanas perspective, they were Brahmins, but they have entered into ruling Kshatriya activity. So that was thing that was related to desanskritization. In the similar fashion, now in the realm of modernization, westernization, there is no boundaries likewise. So now we have transcended all these things. So that is one thing. So you have to highlight all such factors, okay, and then you have to mention those factors that are responsible for changes in the caste system, and you have to say that's how caste identity is getting changed or it is getting dynamic likewise. So that's how you can just say. So then last question from society section was, discuss the impact of post-liberal economy on ethnic identity and communalism. Okay, so here you have to basically, in introduction, you have to talk about what is post-liberal economy, post-liberal economy, liberalization, and post, yes, after LPG reforms, like we have post-liberal economy, liberalism, neoliberalism, we will call it as neoliberalism. So we can define the what is post-liberal economy, and then we have to mention that various problems associated with, okay, not urbanization, this is various problems associated, various things related to communalism. We can say what is communalism in the introduction itself, okay. Then in the body portion, you have to discuss the impact of post-liberal economy on ethnic identity of the people. So ethnic identity of the people. So here, yes, okay, we have the other time. So post-liberal economy, due to post-liberal economy, what we have done, so now there is no strict economic disparities. So we can have economic mobility in the society. So that is one thing. Okay. Then due to post-liberal economy, we have enhanced access to resources now. So people are free to access the resources. Okay, so that is one thing. And the post-liberal economy has also in one way strengthened the ethnic identity, because now they are exposed to a lot of natural resources, and another thing, they have the chance of having economic mobility. So liberalism means there is no strict rules or like it is like in one way liberalism, so freedom. So there is economic mobility and there is adequate access to resources, and thus so ethnic identity has got strengthened in one way, we can say likewise. And the post-liberal economy has also led to greater participation in the social, political and economic aspects, all the aspects. So that is liberalism. So due to liberalism, neoliberalism. So these are some of the impacts on the ethnic identity. Then you can mention the impact of post-liberal economy on communalism. So communalism, what do you mean by communalism? So it is nothing but a feeling, it's nothing but a sense of strong attachments or feeling being attached with a particular group or a particular religion. So that process is known as communalism. So now post-liberal economy has also has some impact on the communalism. Now the people are not sternly adhering to one particular group or one particular religion. So due to enhanced economic access or enhanced economic mobility, they are no more concerned with the same old communalistic tendencies. So we have to mention their multiple aspects related to such thing. So then finally we can conclude the answer by stating how we can utilize the post-liberal economy in an efficient way. We should not use this post-liberal economy for we should not misuse this thing. We have to use it and channelize the efficient usage of post-liberal economy. That's how we have to say. So that is with respect to the society related questions. Okay, and there we have some history related questions, and some of these questions would be discussed by Gyan sir, and I hope like Gyan sir has also discussed some of these questions or some of these topics in while dealing the history section. Okay, but I here give basic orientation like how we have to just proceed with these questions. Okay, so these questions would be dealt will be dealt in detail by Gyal sir. Okay, so topics they have picked is first topic was geographical factors in shaping India's ancient India's development, role of geographical factors. That was one topic. Then differences between Mahatma Gandhi and Ravindranath Tagore's approaches. So that was one topic they have selected. Then socio-economic effects of railways worldwide. So that was one topic. And then main features of Vedic society and religion and relevance from Indian society. So that was one thing. Then technological changes during Sultanate period and their impact on Indian society. And then the effect of colonial rule on the tribals and their response. So these are the regions that they have picked, or the topics that they have picked. Okay, so if you see the first question, explain the role of geographical factors towards development of ancient India. So here you have to, what you have to do, you have to systematically interlink the geographical factors with the ancient India. With the ancient India, that is development of ancient India, and you also have to incorporate the element of development. Here when you see, when you talk about geographical factors, there are various geographical factors. So you may talk about the role of physical features like mountains, plains, plateaus, all such kind of physical features. That is one thing. Then you can talk about the significance of rivers or role of rivers. Okay. Then you can talk about, you can also talk about the climate, role of climate in the development of ancient India, and you can also talk about various other things like vegetation, etc. And here you have to interlink these geographical factors with different phases of ancient India. So here you have to highlight how these factors helped in shaping Indus Valley civilization. You have to highlight the role of Indus River and how it led to flourishing of the Indus Valley civilization. And then next you have to talk about the Vedic era. And there lot of rivers were there. All the, like for example, Indus, there were the traditional names. So you have to quote and you have to use such kind of things. So then you have to move towards all other like heterodox period like Buddhism and Jainism, how these factors led to them. And then you have to mention about relevance with reference to Gupta period. And then you have to mention Mauryan period. So you can talk in Gupta period, and in these areas you can mention how these factors led to this thing. And here we are talking about development. Development here, it can be social development, it can be political developments, and here it can be economic, or it can be other zones, cultural developments, social, political, economic, cultural, technological, all these aspects. So you have to beautifully interlink all these concepts, and you have to present the answer. Okay, likewise, that means you have to systematically interlink the geographical factors with the development of India. So that is important aspect. Okay, so that is one thing. So this was one question. So where UPSC aspect. So systematically interlink these things. So then in the conclusion, we can simply conclude answer by stating that these geographical factors continue to shape India's history, culture and identity today, and making it as an essential element in the understanding of nation's ancient heritage. So likewise, any particular statement you can use and conclude that one. Okay, so that is with reference to the role of geographical factors question. So then, what was the difference between Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore towards education and nationalism? Here you need to have the philosophical knowledge. In introduction, you can talk about the role of scholars, like role of various freedom fighters, and you can also particularly talk about Mahatma Gandhi and Tagore in this struggle for India's freedom fight. So there, in the body portion, you can mention about the views of both these scholars like Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore on the education and nationalism separately. So what about the Mahatma Gandhi's views on nationalism? What about Mahatma Gandhi's views on the education? So all such things. Rabindranath Tagore was talking about the concept of, he has done Shanti Niketan. So where with this, he was talking about integral humanism, integrated development of child. So such things. So here Mahatma Gandhi's views will vary on education. So you have to highlight and mention them and systematically highlight the differences between these two in a tabular form. Generally, differences means people will adapt writing them separately and they will conclude. It should not be the case. You have to use either tabular column or a comparative account. In a same statement, you have to mention both. So this was, take a parameter and mention this was the thing with respect to Mahatma Gandhi, this was the thing with respect to the Tagore, likewise. So Rabindranath Tagore. So likewise you have to mention. Okay. So next question was on bring out the socio-economic effects of introduction of railways in different countries in the world. So this question, so we have to give, or we have to mention the significance of railways, how and when it has been introduced in the world and India, and say how or what is the basic significance of railways in the economic role of railways in economic growth and development of different countries. Simply they play vital role, all such statements you can use. Then in the body you can mention positive socio-economic impacts, and you can also mention some negative socio-economic impacts. So there were a lot of positive socio-economic impacts. So it helped in transportation, or it helped to connectivity, or it helped to give the economic opportunities and employment opportunities and access to resources. All such kind of points you can mention. And they have turned out to be lifelines of the economy. They turned out to provide all such points you can mention. Okay, and then there are some negative impacts also. Negative impacts in the sense yes, though in the name of developmental activities we have just gone for destroying the ecological setting and deforestation, all such kind of things you can mention. Okay, so then you can conclude your answer by stating that railways were not only means of transportation, rather they are also a force of transformation that has shaped the different regions. Here you can mention the effect across the worldwide. So this requires specific knowledge. So that is one thing. So that is the railways question. Then next question is generic question. Discuss the features of Vedic society and Vedic religion. And do you think some of the features are still prevalent in Indian society? So direct question and straightforward question. There is no much subjectivity. So features of Vedic society, like more upholding of Vedas, and resorting to rituals, and resorting to the law of karma and theory of karma. So all such kind of things you can mention, and you can say what are the features that are relevant still in this society. So that thing you can highlight in the body portion, and you can just address. This question is straightforward question. So there is no much in this. There is no much subjectivity in this. So that is one thing. So look at the question from medieval Indian history. So major technological changes introduced in the Sultanate period. So you have to mention about changes with respect to various aspects, changes with respect to architecture. Okay, so Saracenic architecture, or like you have to talk about the irrigation developments with respect to irrigation, introduction of Persian wheel, all such kind of things. So you have to highlight those developments that took place in the Sultanate period. Introduction of Unani medicine with respect to medicine, and introduction of all such things you have to mention, and you have to highlight the impact on that one, and relationship to influence on current Indian society. So you can mention that thing. So that is one thing. So last question was, how did the colonial rule affect the tribals in India, and what was the tribal response for such colonial rule? So there were a lot of tribal revolts and tribal movements in reaction to the various policies of the colonial rule. So you have to mention various social policies, various economic policies, and various political policies, socio-economic political policies of the British rule. And there you have to highlight how and what was the response of tribals. For example, ban on the practice of human sacrifice. So that was one policy that has been adopted by the Britishers or in colonial period. So in against that, there was resentment from the people. So people, they haven't accepted it with the broad mind, because that was their cultural setting. So economic policies, there were a lot of economic policies that have been brought. So you are also aware of land tenure systems like Jamindari system, Raitwari system, and Mahalwari system. So Jamindari system posed a lot of issues, and there were so many tribes who were resented against such kind of economic policies. Okay, and tribal policies, forest policies that have been brought in the colonial period. That was also led to resentment among the various tribes. So you have to mention those tribal revolts and tribal movements, and you have to highlight, explain them. So that is the chief demand. So this question is also more or less, it is easier question. Okay, so that was with reference to different aspects or questions related to GS1. Okay, so to just summarize or to just say, what you have to keep in mind is that now same questions may not be repeated in the exam, but what we have to keep in mind is that we have to, what lessons that have been taught by this paper, you have to keep that thing in mind. What are the lessons, or what are the learnings from this paper is that do not stick yourself to one particular subject and read in an isolated manner. Interlink one subject with other subject, interlink one concept with other concept, interlink one paper with other paper. That is the first lesson that we can just learn. And second thing, do not neglect the current related aspects. So UPSC has picked lot of current things and it incorporated questions on that. Okay, so you have to strictly and sternly follow the newspapers and current affairs. And other thing, do not neglect the statistical data, and do not neglect statistical data. You have to keep in pace with such statistical data. So simultaneously frame the statistical data also. So earlier it used to be believed that paper 3 is more of statistical, it includes statistical data, but now we also have to incorporate statistical data in paper 1. Okay, so keep that also in mind. So keep this also in mind that paper is shifting slightly from static questions to dynamic application and analytical oriented questions. So try to broaden your horizon and do not have a single-sided, single-dimensional approach of study. So that is one thing. So finally, we have to have a proper interlinkage between all the aspects. So that is the different lessons or different learnings that we can take from this particular paper. Okay, so apart from this, try to just go through all other papers also once, because as you are going to appear for the next year, it is very, very important for you to analyze the nature. And last but not the least, again I am saying that try to analyze the sections that are being asked in the exam, and some sections would be tactically neglected by UPSC, and you just focus on those topics. If, for example, modern history, if for example medieval India has been neglected by UPSC, then in 3 to 4 years it is going to shift to that one. So that has been done here. So similarly all other sections, geography was being neglected, now it picked the pace, and society used to be neglected, now it picked the pace. So try to keep this kind of observations also in mind. Okay, so focus both on the most important topics and focus on the least important topics, so that you won't receive any shocks in the exam, so that we will be normal. When all others are getting tensed, we will have, people will not be more of uncertain likewise. Okay, keep this thing is also in mind. Okay, so that's all for with respect to GS1 paper. So in later classes, other papers will be discussed by respective faculties. Okay, so that is for today. Okay, so that's all for today. So let's meet later on. Thank you all.